Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. As you can see, there's no Henry Hill and Michael McCubbin this week. They're taking on some well-earned holidays. So I've got Patrick Van Straten and Joe Tomlinson. Welcome back, guys. Continental Club, maybe the first time you both have been on at the same time since 2019, maybe?
Yeah, I literally haven't been on the show in
Don't remember.
years. But I love this setup, mate. New table out for this episode. Much better than that white nonsense we had before. I think this is looking good.
Yeah?
I mean, it should be comfortable. Like, the chair setup is very comfortable.
Do you like the chair? You're happy with the chair?
We've got so many lights and cameras pointed at us that I do feel like I'm giving a press conference before the Champions League final.
Yeah, I also forgot my glasses as well, so I can't really see anything. But we'll make a...
But you are make-upped up.
Yes, very made up.
Made up.
Made up is the phrase. Yeah,
Yeah.
I look quite orange actually. I'm not sure about this.
That's because
colour
Dougie's been on TV as the European football expert on Sky Sports News earlier. He doesn't just walk around the office wearing makeup.
And
Yes,
he broke exclusive Barcelona insider news.
did, actually.
I understand that Leo Messi texted you to say he's on his way back
He's
to Barca.
definitely going back to Barcelona, was how the mistranslation was used by Copper, who apparently are a Spanish radio station. But either way, my mentions were on fire for an hour, and then they deleted the tweet because he is not definitely going back. He might go back. But we will actually get onto that in due course, because today we're talking about transfers your club must avoid this summer. So obviously it's the final week of European action this weekend. The Bundesliga's already finished. The Prem's already finished. But yeah, it's transfer season, guys. You know, where Football Daily comes alive, some say. Joe, the first one we're going to talk about is that move. Lionel Messi to Barcelona. Yeah. Is this a yay or a nay from you?
It's a nay from me. It is a nay from me personally. It appears to be a yay from Xavi himself, though, doesn't it? I mean, hyping it up continuously in the Spanish press. He's obviously spoken about...
High risk.
Yeah, very high risk. I mean, from a financial point of view, anyway. He's obviously spoken about wanting him back and saying that he's had conversations with Lionel Messi, and most recently, or at least at the time of recording, has come out to say that, you know, it's 99% in the hands of Leo Messi. And it appears that, according to a lot of Catalan media outlets anyway, that Barcelona met with La Liga and Javier Tebas to kind of hash out some sort of plan of how to bring Messi back, because of course they have been hit so hard by La Liga's regulations, haven't they, in terms of wages. They've managed to offload Busquets and free up some wages from that, and I think Jordi Alba potentially as well. But then by acquiring Messi, all of that good work you're probably thrown away, because his wage is so astronomical. And of course we've seen reports of this $1 billion deal to Saudi Arabia. Would they have to match that? And if they did have to match that, surely it would be impossible. I think from a financial standpoint, this would be a silly move. I don't think a right winger / creator is exactly what Barcelona need. I think potentially a Busquets replacement, maybe a right back upgrade as well, should be on the cards. I don't really think Barcelona are desperate for a player of Messi's type. I think this would be a sentimental signing, an overpay because his wages would be too huge. Yes, he's had a good season in France, but I think it smells a little bit like Cristiano Ronaldo returning to Manchester United for me. And I don't think that actually worked.
Yeah, I think they should have learned from that. I mean, Pat, from a playing perspective, let's ignore the finances. What do you think this would potentially mean for Pedri, Gavi, players like that in Barcelona's lineup if Messi was to return?
Well, I suppose both of those guys have had their injury issues, so in a sense it would make them more kind of resilient. But it does seem, like Joe's saying, it's putting sentiment ahead of the future of the club, because clearly their plan should be, how do we make sure that Pedri and Gavi make good on the promise that they've shown as young players? I mean, I say promise, Pedri in particular has already played like pretty much a world-class player, but you want him to go on to become a great for the club. Messi's been dropping deeper and deeper and doing more of the kind of midfield stuff during his time at PSG, but it just feels like, well, the bigger issue is what do Barcelona want from it? If they were to go and get Messi back, what would be the plan? We win the Champions League?
No.
Because they won the title this season.
Yeah.
So if they can win the title without Messi, why do they need to go and do it? I don't really understand what the plan is. Clearly the plan should be, let's establish a dynasty that will rival the ones that we had before, with all our La Masia graduates, or rival Real Madrid's achievements on the European stage. Well, they're not going to do that with Lionel Messi at this stage of his career, at this age. It's just not possible. So to me, I think it would mean for those guys that the club doesn't really have a vision for how they're going to maximise our careers. And that would concern me a little bit, even if I'd be excited to think, wow, what would it look like next season to play with, Messi and Lewandowski at the same time? I think there are just so many other areas of the squad that need to be sorted out. Not least because actually this season, Ousmane Dembele, Rafinha, when they've been on the field, I think have been excellent. Are they Messi level? No. Do they need to be? Also no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. My attitude here is it's Jack Reacher. Never go back. That's what I feel the motto needs to be for Barcelona.
I love it. A good shout out. Yeah, I feel like Barcelona are the only club that would probably look at Sergio Busquets, one of the legends of that club, leaving and be like, our priority for the first few weeks of the window is to get back Lionel Messi. Like, come on, priorities, guys. Like De Jong, Franck Kessie, they're great box-to-box players, but they're not necessarily that controlling six. Sort out the Busquets replacement. If you've got some money left over at the end of the summer, maybe think about Messi, but I just don't think it should be a priority. Pat, let's talk about a potential other exit from La Liga, like Messi a few years ago, in Karim Benzema, because there's been some bizarre news this week about a potential move to Saudi. What's going on?
Yeah, well, supposedly the Saudi League, and it is the Saudi League, have been making overtures to Karim Benzema. It looks like it would be potentially a move to Al Ittihad, but supposedly he would have some freedom in which club he went to because the Saudi League is
like
just
a franchise player
to get him in. Yeah, basically, it's like an MLB player,
Wow.
where your contract's with the league rather than a club. But apparently, it would net him between 100 and 150 million euros a season for 2 years. There would be significant other benefits, as there tend to be when you go and play in the Middle East. Maybe you'll win the lottery. Maybe you'll get just a part of the Middle East to yourself. Apparently, he would retain 100% of his image rights, which, as we know, is an extremely lucrative part of the kind of the financial package, I guess, for players at this highest level. I guess I can understand it. Like, obviously, money's made up. Saudi Arabia doesn't care. They just chuck money at things. Like it doesn't matter to them. And Karim Benzema, still an elite player, coming from Real Madrid. He's a very high-profile Muslim footballer. You can see certain ways it kind of lines up. But again, what is the end game here? Is it to increase the reach of Saudi football? Because I actually don't know if that's possible. Truly, I really don't know if it's possible, and I don't think Benzema. If Ronaldo hasn't done it, I'm not convinced that Benzema does it. But I guess their plan is maybe we can have a Benzema versus Ronaldo rivalry, and then we can market that game. Nobody actually cares.
Yeah.
And it's a huge problem for Real Madrid if it goes through. Real Madrid supposedly have had this 1-year contract extension on the table. We don't quite know if there's a way for Benzema to get out of it, or whether this move would also entail a transfer fee. But if there isn't a transfer fee, Real Madrid will be absolutely raging because it's a horrible market to go looking for a striker in. Already rumours saying, maybe they'll look at Harry Kane, maybe they'll look at Victor Osimhen. But really their plan was, I think, that Benzema would tide them over until they got Endrick either to a level where he was able to come into the side, or until maybe they could have another pop at Mbappe, or maybe have a think about Haaland. If they end up having to enter the market this summer, I think Real Madrid will be furious.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, Pat makes a good point, because it felt like this summer was going to be about Bellingham and signing a backup striker to tide them over, but now they might have to sign a top striker as well.
Yeah, I think it'll still be about Bellingham for Real Madrid. I suppose with the title of this video, transfers to avoid, this is almost one to avoid from Real Madrid's perspective, isn't it? Because they don't want to lose Karim Benzema at such a crucial juncture in their transfer sort of planning. I think from his perspective, he might end up taking this, Karim Benzema. It's an awful lot of money at that stage of his career, isn't it? Of course, I think he would go on to become an ambassador for the Saudi Tourism Board, the same way Lionel Messi, of course, has, which is part of the reason why Lionel Messi, of course, got suspended by PSG, and he would obviously be one of the faces of this supposed 2030 World Cup bid that kind of contains Saudi Arabia and a number of different other countries. But from Real Madrid's perspective, I totally agree. I think this would be not disastrous, but it might just mean they have to bring plans forward. It looks like Bobby Firmino is potentially high on their list. I think they would probably, with or without Benzema, like to get that one done. And then it maybe means that Florentino Perez does have to move up his plans for Kylian Mbappe. I mean, there were reports, weren't they, that originally he wanted to kind of unveil the new Bernabeu with Mbappe. That was going to be the moment that they unveiled the new Bernabeu. Maybe that's still going to be possible. But if it is, they're just going to have to stick their hand in their pocket big time. We've seen them produce a willingness to pay upwards of 200 million euros for Mbappe, even when he had, a year left on his contract, 6 months left on his contract. They might have to do that again. They might have to say, okay, we're going to have to just spunk a load of money on Mbappe this summer to cover for Benzema, even though we could have got him, for free next year. And that 200 million euro cost is just going to have to be eaten, and it doesn't come in at a great time when they're going to have to pay 100 million for Jude Bellingham, who's coming off the back of what seems like serious knee surgery after playing for the last 6 weeks with knee problems. So it's not great timing for Real Madrid, and I'm sure that Perez is going to want to avoid it at all costs, and I'm 100% sure Carlo Ancelotti is not going to want it to go through.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. It will just be it'll be interesting. I mean, as you say, their finances are in a pretty good shape. Since that summer of 2019 where they spunked a lot of money, most of all on Eden Hazard, they actually haven't really spent much at all. Even last summer when they brought in Tchouaméni, the departure of Casemiro and other players like that, they've sold a lot of young, very talented fringe players as well in the last 3-4 years, the likes of Martin Odegaard, etc. So their finances are pretty good, but it would be a blow. I totally agree. Right, let's move on to Declan Rice to Bayern Munich. Now, this has been all over British news this
Would you
week.
avoid this one?
I don't think I necessarily would, but I don't think it's a priority for Bayern. Look, Choupo-Moting's 34. They struggled with his absence at points this year, even though Kingsley Coman probably had the best year of his career so far. Serge Gnabry was inconsistent. Leroy Sané was inconsistent. Obviously, there was a lot of unhappiness behind the scenes with Nagelsmann. He fell out with Thomas Müller. That kind of affected it. Musiala's form dipped towards the end of the year. So I do think they need a striker. I think that would be my priority if I was Thomas Tuchel this summer, but maybe he thinks that it can do both. But it's rare for Bayern to spend big on two players in one summer. I think they've only spent over £70 million on two players ever, which is Luka Hernandez and Matthias de Ligt.
He's leaving though, isn't he, Luka?
Luka Hernandez potentially leaving to PSG, which will bring in a tidy fee, you imagine, although he has been injured for much of this season, so maybe that will slightly affect it. But supposedly it's because Tuchel sees the future of that midfield as releasing Kimmich further forward to play those amazing progressive passes that he can do and those line-splitting passes. Rice is more of the sitter because he has concerns over Goretzka's defensive limitations, supposedly.
I'm not sure about this.
I think it's a bit bizarre.
I don't know. They do have a soft centre at Bayern Munich. I mean, and look, we've just said that the striker market is limited. If the options are drop 100 mil on Declan Rice and we'll have a look at a striker down the road, or drop 100 mil on Randall Kolo Muani, I think it's an easy choice.
I know you don't like Muani.
Yeah.
I do like Muani. He's just nowhere near that value. Mm-hmm. Nowhere near.
If it meant Osimhen, 120 on Osimhen, or using 100 mil of that on Rice, I think I'd definitely go for Osimhen.
Yeah, though at the same time, I still think what was Bayern's problem this season, it's just that they're unbelievably soft-centred. You can still just drive straight through the middle of them. There is something wrong there, and it's a centre-back issue to some degree, but I don't know. I could imagine Rice maybe in that kind of hybrid, middle of a back three stepping into midfield thing that we always heard Chelsea kind of talk about with him. That these are both areas that need to be corrected in the side. If it's Osimhen Rice, I go Osimhen. But if Osimhen isn't available to you because you can't get him out of Napoli price him out, or because, say, Real Madrid become involved, I don't know. I think that one big signing to sort the midfield this summer, go for a striker again next summer, it's not the worst strategy.
I think they probably are looking at their current midfield options and thinking Sabitzer is going to be made available for a sale. I don't think Manchester United are going to make that permanent by all the noise. It seems like he's going to go back, but I don't see him being part of Thomas Tuchel or Bayern Munich's plans there. It seems like Ryan Gravenberch potentially is going to be made available as well. It seems like Liverpool very interested, and a few other teams on the continent, especially from Italy, interested in him. So that frees up two spaces. And clearly, as we've seen in the German press recently, Thomas Tuchel isn't a fan of the midfield duo Kimmich and Leon Goretzka. But I just think Declan Rice has Arsenal written all out. Like, I think Bayern Munich would be an incredible transfer for the player, and I think he would be an amazing signing for Bayern Munich. Yeah. But I think he wants to stay in the Premier League. It would allow him to stay in London. I've watched his interview with Gary Neville on The Overlap, where he talks about being so desperate to stay amongst his home comforts, amongst his family, and that would allow that move to happen. I think Arsenal would be able to match, if not pay substantially more in terms of wages. We know that Declan's agency is family-led, and I think it's his brother or his cousin that supports him in that regard. I personally think that he's definitely going to stay in the Premier League, and despite the fact Bayern Munich fluttering their eyelids at him, I think I would be surprised if Arsenal don't get this deal done very quickly. It's not necessarily one I would avoid if I was Bayern, but I kind of agree with Dukes. I think I would spend that money on a forward, and I would be really pushing to sign one of the big names that's available this summer, even though there aren't many.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Vlahovic is the one in the last couple of days that's really been talked about a lot. And
Wouldn't do
also,
that.
it's not just their midfield that potentially needs to be looked at. It's actually their fullbacks as well, because Pavard has been linked with a move away for months now. Jacques Cancelo, they're not going to sign him permanently on that €70 million deal. Alphonso Davies been linked with moves to Real Madrid. You know, it's unlikely that he'll move this summer, but he might do next year if they aren't challenging for the Champions League again. So there are other issues, I think, in that squad.
But don't you think that Bayern can often solve those issues very easily? You know, so already rumours that Raf Guerrero is coming in. You know, it just feels like Bayern can always say, oh, the squad players, oh, not a problem. We'll just pick those up from around the Bundesliga for pennies. It's not really an issue, and they can afford to kind of go big for the big ticket items. I mean, I guess Lima coming in, that is a point.
I feel so sorry for him. He is a Nagelsmann
already been written
midfielder,
off.
and he agreed to join when Nagelsmann was manager. Now Tuchel, if they're bringing in Rice, he's going to be fourth choice from the get-go. Pretty grim for him. Anyway, let's move on to another midfielder, Joe, in Adrien Rabiot, and this came in from He Football to Man United. Now, I'm intrigued by your thoughts on this one.
Again, I don't think I agree this is a transfer to avoid. I'm not too sure about He Football's suggestion of Man United avoiding this. I think on a free transfer, I think his profile fits Manchester United quite well. You know, we've seen him play a lot of minutes. I think second most minutes in the Juventus squad this season from that left-hand side of a central midfield duo. I think alongside Casemiro, it would give Manchester United a really, really solid foundation to build off. Very, very physical. We've heard Adrien Rabiot talk in the past about a desire to play in the Premier League. I think it was at Christmas, wasn't it? He was saying that he's desperate to play in England. And Manchester United, of course, had that £12 million deal agreed with Juventus last summer. So clearly Erik ten Hag is a fan of him. That was before United had signed Casemiro, though. So whether or not he was thinking of playing in a slightly different way, and I believe that's probably the case given his first midfield target at Manchester United was Frenkie de Jong, a very different kind of deep-line midfielder to a player like Casemiro. Whether or not he thinks Rabiot and Casemiro can function together, I'm not too sure. Probably he does, because Casemiro has played a lot deeper this season, and Rabiot has actually been slightly more advanced. I think he's the highest non-penalty goal-scoring midfielder in the entirety of Serie A this season. I think he scored 8 from midfield, which isn't a huge number, but gives you an indication that he can provide and arrive a little bit later in the box, which, of course, Manchester United on that left-hand side of a central midfield are demanding of, because Christian Eriksen, although he has offered nothing defensively, his creative numbers still very solid, still puts up a lot of chance creation. So I think it's interesting to find out what Ten Hag wants from his left-sided central midfielder, because the names being linked are very different. You've got Rabiot on one hand, free transfer, and then you've got Mason Mount, where Manchester United are clearly extremely interested. We've seen David Ornstein say that Mason Mount favours a move to Manchester United. Laurie Whitwell in The Athletic as well reporting that Manchester United want the left-sided midfielder to be much more advanced, so they're almost playing 2 number 10s with Casemiro sat in behind, which would kind of suit Mason Mount. Extremely energetic, fantastic off the ball, but it does wonder, for me, where does the deep progression come from? There's a lot of responsibility being placed on Lisandro Martinez if that's the case, because Casemiro isn't that guy, and without Lisandro Martinez, United have consistently struggled to progress the ball from the first phase. So I think if you're going to sign a player, I would probably lean more towards Mount, just because of the way Ten Hag has utilised Christian Eriksen further up the pitch this season. But on a free transfer, it's definitely not one to avoid. I would maybe sign both if you can get the wages right.
Interesting. I mean, Pat, okay, I'm putting you in Erik ten Hag's shoes. You've got a free option of Rabiot, or you've got to spend at least £50 million on Mount. What are you doing?
I probably take Mount. I mean, I don't really think that they're, as Joe says, kind of direct rivals in Ten Hag's mind. But I think Mount is a player who could be at the heart of that side for a long time to come. And this is meant to be a rebuild. There's only so many older players you can get. Now, obviously, in Rabiot's case, he can be a squad player for quite a long time. You're not really losing like a big spot in the team. But I also do find Rabiot's history to be a bit of a concern here.
Yeah.
You know, you're basically saying we're going to rely on maybe Varane and Casemiro in this squad as the kind of the big players to keep Rabiot in check, because this feels like the kind of move that would have happened a few years ago when people thought, you know what, Man United is a place that we can go and get a really good paycheck and kind of like dick around for a little bit and not take it seriously. And that's the last thing Man United need. If I were Man United, I would actually take a slightly inferior player who really wanted to be there, if that makes sense. As a player, it's fine. It looks like he's got his head on straight this season at Juve.
When he's playing for a new deal.
If they can maintain that, then that's fine. But I personally think that there are probably better options to be had.
Fair. He has had an excellent year. I don't mean to be critical of that. I just it is interesting that he really turned it on when he was out of contract.
I also think it would just be funny to sign Mount just to see, Chelsea fans' faces, to be honest with you.
But somebody's got there. You're going to see those faces either
I know,
way, right?
but
Because
it's just going to be delightful.
they're going to go to
I want to see
United or
Zach Schlapp
Arsenal, or
crying.
Liverpool,
And he's
City.
going to cry.
He makes a lot more sense for me for United than Arsenal personally.
I think he'd be playing in in exactly the same way, right?
Yeah.
Though, right? Like what Joe's just said. Is that not what Arsenal want? He'll be
advanced
that
Xhaka's been.
Xhaka role.
Yeah.
But then
for
if you're
City,
also
he'd go
signing,
into
but then if
Gundogan's
you're also
position for
signing
Liverpool.
Rice, unless you're planning on dropping Partey, which I don't think is the worst idea either. I don't know whether he gets into Arsenal's starting 11 as easily as he does the United one person.
Yeah, I think that it's really interesting because on Twitter, I think there's this narrative of Mount is suddenly a bad player. Like it's developed really quickly, and I think it has been the case for a while. To be fair, he's not had a good season, Mason Mount.
But Chelsea fans last year were even saying this.
Yeah, it's a weird little narrative that it's like, oh, he's like a number 10 off the ball, doesn't score any goals, doesn't get any assists, and it's like, well, when he was at his best, extremely creative, goal scoring, one of the best off the ball midfielders in the league, extremely hard working. I think there's a bit of a misconception about the type of player Mason Mount is. I totally agree. I think if Manchester City were to sign Mount and play him in that Gundogan role or the Bernardo Silva role, if Arsenal were to play him in that Xhaka role, I think Manchester United are looking to build something slightly similar where they have a deep-lying playmaker, Bruno extremely high like they play with Ødegaard, and then a shuttling sort of 8/10 in Xhaka / Mason Mount. So I think he's a nice fit for Manchester United, but I think going back to Rabiot, I would be surprised to see him join in the summer, even though he's free. I just can't see it.
Okay, there we have it. Right, let's get back Euro-related. Ruben Neves to Barcelona, Pat. This came in from series of numbers. Do we like this? I mean, they've been linked to Martin Zubamendi of Real Sociedad. They've been linked to numerous other defensive midfielders. Do you think Ruben Neves would be a good fit as that Busquets replacement that we talked about earlier?
Yeah, I don't really see why this needs to be avoided at all. I think he's a really good fit for them. And rumours suggest that maybe a deal's doable at around 26 million.
They need cash.
Wolves need cash. And God, it would be such a tough beat for them because for years they were hyping this guy up as 60, 70, 80 million pounds. He's going to go to Man City. He's going to be a huge player. Maybe United could go for him. And now if he ends up going for under 30, it will be devastating. But Barcelona need a Busquets replacement. They need a sitter. As you were saying before, they need to free up De Jong. And I guess to some extent, Kessié. Certainly Gavi and Pedri. I think that this is about as good value as you're going to find in the market.
I agree.
He's a guy who can be part of the team for a long time. He absolutely fits the Barcelona way, I think. Like, he's an excellent progressive passer in the top quarter of players, despite playing in an absolutely dreadful attacking side. He's extremely active defensively, really strong in the duel. I think that him sitting in front of your back line is stylistically a very good Busquets replacement. I think he'd be much cheaper than Zubamendi, where it's always been kind of 50-60 in that range, basically the release clause. And actually Zubamendi is a bit more of a mobile guy. I think that Neves is more straightforward, and that's not the worst thing. So I don't know. I don't really see the issue with this one, to be honest. I guess the only thing you might say is, well, what does it cost them? If the situation with wages is critical, and it certainly seems like it always is going to be critical, is Neves who you prioritise? Because you do have Kessié there, he can maybe play this role. You do have De Jong there, he can play this role. You have Sergio Roberto who can kind of play this role. Is this absolutely the signing you want to make? But when I look at price, I don't even think the wages would be that crazy.
I actually think I think he would get better as well.
Yeah,
for Wolves, because I actually think he would be better in a possession dominant system.
Yes.
Whereas at Wolves, they have been quite transitional based over the last few years. Not so much under Lopetegui recently, but certainly under, you think of Nuno, very transitional side, using the likes of Adama Traore super effectively, and Ruben Neves' passing range is so good that it allows them to do that. I think Ruben Neves in a possession dominant system where he could free players and spread the ball to Abalde on the left flank and then reverse it to Rafinha very quickly. I think he's a perfect fit at that fee. I think this would be a ridiculous shout to call and avoid at that fee. His age, I think he's been captain for years, captain of Porto. I think youngest captain of Porto in their history, wasn't he, in the Champions League history? Leader on the pitch.
Ever players in the Champions League.
I think it's just a natural fit.
Yeah, it would be an amazing story as well because he stayed loyal to Wolves for so long, and to go to Wolves for about 5-6 years now, and then get a move to Barcelona, which for many players that grow up on the continent is pretty much the dream destination. It's a really nice story. I tend to agree with you. So not too many avoids so far. But what about Dominic Livakovic to Villarreal? Now, Pepe Reina has been Villarreal's goalkeeper this term. He's 40 and came out with some pretty disgraceful comments about Vinicius Jr., which we talked about in a previous week's episode, so I won't go back over that. But I would like to see the end of Pepe Reina, not in terms of his life, but from Villarreal would be ideal. Geronimo Rulli left to join Ajax in January, and they've been linked with Livakovic, who you might remember from the World Cup, saved, I think it was 3 penalties against Japan in the last 16, then saved another one against Brazil in the quarter-final, and then had a really good game in the third-place playoff as well, and I think L'Équipe gave him 10 out of 10 in that game, which is pretty rare.
Very rare for L'Équipe.
Yeah, but actually, for Villarreal, it's not too bad a move. I saw him being linked with Man United. I had some questions about that. Not like I've watched him all that often, but he's not the most comfortable with his feet, but does seem like a very good shot stopper. It basically seems like a slightly younger David De Gea. But for a club like Villarreal, it's not the worst sort of landing spot. My only issue with this is they've now got Quique Setien in, who is this uber possession disciple, really. Probably one of the most fixed on possession in Europe in terms of managers in that sort of bracket. And their possession is now around the third best in La Liga, or at least, retaining the third most. So would they want Livakovic, who does struggle with the ball at his feet? It's a minor question to worry about. Someone I thought they could go for was Alban Lafont, who's been at Nantes for a number of years now. Excellent shot stopper as well. I think he saved over 5 XG this season, about 4 the year before as well. So he's in really good form. He's a nice age as well. But Livakovic to Villarreal, it's not the end of the world. It's also not the headline of this show. It's not going to take up too much time. Right, guys, let's do these next couple quite quickly. Marco Asensio to PSG, Joe. Last minute approach from PSG because it seemed like he was going to go to Villa for a bit.
Yeah, it seems like he's out of contract, so it seems like that deal isn't going to get renewed. Yeah, I think it is a bit of a battle going on here, to be honest with you. PSG obviously losing Messi, potentially losing Neymar as well. Forward options, when you take those two out the side, are really, really thin. You've really got Hugo Ekitike, you've got Kylian Mbappe, and then you're out, unless you want to sort of include one of the elite group, the youngsters, in that forward line. So they're definitely going to have to sign forwards this summer. Asensio on a free transfer, I'm not convinced about, personally. Look, from Asensio's point of view, he would be on big wages. He'd be playing Champions League football. He would probably be starting a fair few games. But again, for PSG, it feels like a bit of an off-the-ball passenger, maybe somebody who's extremely creative, massive injury problems. I think he started 19 games this season. Again, 15 goal involvement, so we know he can be creative, but across his Madrid career, he's had huge injury problems. He's always struggled to get over 2,000 league minutes. I personally think Villa is a better fit for him, and I would like to see him play under Unai Emery. I think given the Aston Villa wide names on the books, you look at the likes of Philippe Coutinho, Leon Bailey's had injury problems, Jacob Ramsey's had to be forced out wide at times, McGinn's been forced out wide at times. I think Asensio would come in and be like a star at Villa, and I think that would be good for him rather than being another player like he's been at Madrid. He would be another player at PSG. Villa would absolutely love him. I would like to see him get given that chance, because let's not forget when he broke through, the hype around Asensio was, we're talking about the next big thing coming out of Spain. It's not really happened for him at Madrid. If he goes to PSG, I can see it kind of just fizzling there again. I would personally like to see him at Villa Park, but I can see why he goes to PSG. Yeah,
it did seem around like 2017, 2018, we're going to be talking about sort of a future Ballon d'Or sort of contender. He was really that good. But yeah, so many injury issues. What he's been really good at this year is when he's played limited minutes, he's still kind of contributed with a goal and assist, even when he hasn't often played that well.
9 goals, 6 assists, I think.
Yeah, really good output. And I think he got 12 goals last year as well, so not to be sniffed at. Pat, Benfica, looking at Di Maria apparently, a bit of a romantic one from Bernardo Yupp. Do you like that?
Not really. I don't think I would do this one. I mean, Benfica obviously won the league this year. It was only by 2 points in the end, but I think that was largely because they took their foot off the pedal as they kind of came down the stretch. Obviously had a Champions League quarter-final, which played into that too. But to me, the success of this Benfica side has been the success of every Roger Schmidt side. It's been we press really high and we absolutely dominate. Is Di Maria a part of this at this stage of his career? They've already got some older players they're quite reliant on in Rafa, in Joao Mario. I don't think he's going to replace either of them, especially seeing as they were in the top 3 scorers at the club. Now, there are some attacking minutes to be had here because they brought in Gonzalo Guedes. They've got Julian Draxler. Those guys between them combined for under 1,000 minutes. David Neres has been pretty good, but not like, world-beating numbers. Not the player that we once expected him to be when he was at Ajax. So, yes, there is room for another versatile attacker. I'm just not sure it's Di Maria. Like, Di Maria is going to go there essentially, like he's walking around the pitch, clapping the supporters. That's okay. Di Maria, he's clearly still an excellent player. 8 goals and assists in Serie A this season in about 1,300 minutes. When he was on, he was really on. The underlying numbers completely back that up. But I don't know. Does he push you further in the Champions League? Probably not.
He's 35.
Does he make a difference for you in the league? Well, you already won the league. I think that probably Benfica can be a little bit more adventurous, go and get somebody from South America, the same way they originally found Di Maria.
They are good at that.
Rather than saying, again, Jack Reacher, never go back. I just think they need to maybe think a little bit more creatively. And more importantly, think about who is going to play Schmidt ball. The whole thing here, the whole success of them this season has been the system. So prioritise the system. Don't prioritise a big name.
Fair enough. Pat has got no room for romance today. He's not liking these returns. Right, I'll quickly talk about Joselu to Real Madrid. This came in from Sean 15 McKenzie. Espanyol have been relegated after only drawing with Valencia last weekend. He's 33. He's got a clause supposedly in his contract where he can leave on loan. Real Madrid are apparently looking at him. Prepare the memes if this goes through, particularly if you're a Premier League fan, because he was pretty forgettable in his time at Stoke and Newcastle. But actually, he's been pretty good. First for Alaves and Espanyol. He scored over 10 league goals for the last 3 seasons. But this is a real backup. I don't want to see Joselu leading the line for Real Madrid next year. I think that'd just be incredibly depressing. But fair play to him for doing well in La Liga.
Smells of Martin Braithwaite, this, mate.
Yeah, I just don't particularly like it. And it would, La Liga, in terms of their striking talent right now, is at pretty much an all-time low. And Joselu might be looking good in La Liga at the moment. But in terms of pushing Real Madrid forward next year, not the one for me. Guys, what do you think about those transfers? Do you think you should have avoided them, or do you agree with us that actually some of them would have been okay? Let us know in the comments down below, and let's move on to our big match predictions. So just reviewing last week's results quickly. Dortmund versus Mainz. We all backed Dortmund. Of course, it was a 2-2 draw, so no points to any of us. Valencia versus Espanyol. Henry went 3-2 Espanyol. I went 1-0 Espanyol. McCubs went 3-3. It was 2-2, so 1 point to McCubs. Juventus versus Milan. Henry backed Juve. McCubs went with a draw. I said 2-1 Milan. It was 1-0 Milan, so 1 point to me. That means the scores for the final time this season are me on 63, Henry on 49, and McCubs on 44.
That's a battering,
That
mate.
is a huge win for you.
You guys haven't been watching this year. The gap's never even been that close. I didn't want to say anything of those two, but they've never really been in the running. But anyway, it's done. I retained my title. Actually, I drew it last year with Henry, so I win it outright for the first time. But guys, you guys are just competing for fun in the final week. Let's see how we get on. Udinese versus Juventus is the first game we're going to talk about. Sunday, 8 p.m, 12th versus 7th. There's 13 points between them. But the reason we're going to talk about this game is because Juventus have the potential of getting Europa League. They are guaranteed to get Conference League football, but they're only 2 points behind 5th place Atalanta and 1 point behind Roma. Roma play Spezia, Atalanta play Monza, who don't have anything riding on this because they're comfortably in mid-table. Spezia fighting against relegation. And it's just been a real shame for Juve, with their 10 points back on, they'd be 4th ahead of Milan, which
It's not been a shame for him, mate. That's
I know.
right.
It's funny.
It has messed up the entire league this year. It's been a farce.
But it's their own fault, isn't it?
It's funny.
It's their director's fault. It's not necessarily the players. And I think some of the players
Did the players have a group chat saying, by the way, don't tell anyone we're doing crimes?
You jokers, you guys. Anyway, it's end of an era at Juve. Rabiot, as we've already said, leaving. Di Maria, Paredes isn't going to re-sign on loan. And they're playing an Udinese side whose form is pretty rubbish at the moment. Destiny Udogie's looking like he's going to leave. Beto's being linked with Everton. So it's got real end-of-a-season vibe here. Guys, I'm going with the scrappy 2-1 to Juve. Pat, what would be your score prediction for this one?
I think it'll be Juve 2-0. Like, Juve actually, playing-wise, have got it together. pretty solidly over the course of the season. I mean,
There we have it.
It
is a shame.
They would. Well, it's not a shame. Like it's excellent. They've tried really hard this season, and it doesn't matter. That's what they deserve. I don't know. I think they'll probably win this 2-0, but yeah, I'm glad that they're missing out on Champions League.
I'm going to go 3-1 Udinese.
Nice.
Worth.
Yeah,
Like
I think Juventus have just turned off. I think that Allegri admitted it the other day, didn't he? Kind of said, look, the season was done when we lost to Sevilla. The last 2 results have been... I think that all the players have basically phoned in at this stage, including the manager. And I think that they will not be asked about going away at Udinese. And stranger things have happened. Phoned it in. 3-1 Udinese.
Conference League football probably not ideal for a club like Juve next year. It's a bit like if Spurs had got there in the Premier League. Pat, let's talk about Celta Vigo versus Barcelona. This again is Sunday 8 p.m. 17th versus first. There's 44 points between them, so we're not talking about it because of their proximity in the league. But Barca could send Celta Vigo down, Pat.
Yeah, Celta Vigo. I mean, look, they are, as you say, like just above the drop zone. They're just above Valladolid, who are on 39 points. I also level with Almeria on points on 40, but Almeria have got the head-to-head advantage. It still feels like they might be okay, but at the same time, Valladolid have got Getafe, who I think are about 14th right now, whereas Celta play the champions. On the plus side for them, Barca have switched off a little bit. Barca lost 3-1 to Valladolid straight after they won the title. They won 3-0 against Mallorca the other day, but that was with the help of a red card. So there is maybe a little bit of room for this. It's at home. The whole stadium's going to be up for it. It's going to come down to 2 guys, I think. It's
Iago Aspas.
Iago Aspas. It's always
My
Iago
boy.
Aspas. Iago Aspas is on his 8th consecutive season of getting double figures in the league.
He's a legend.
He's absolutely unbelievable. And I don't think he deserves to get relegated with them. Plus, they've got Gabri Vega, who has had a good season as well. 13 goals and assists as a 20-year-old central midfielder. I mean, is he? Not really. So it'll be an interesting game for people who want to have a look at him because he may well move on this summer. I think they're a little bit unlucky to be as low down as they are. Their XG, I think they're about 13th in the league. Their XG against, they're 8th in the league. You know, they're actually a pretty solid side. So I think that they don't really deserve to be here. Barcelona, nothing to play for, except there's the possibility that Ter Stegen breaks the record for clean sheets in Europe's top 5 leagues. He's already broken the record this century. He's got 26 clean sheets, which broke Petr Cech's record. It's level with, I don't know, some guy I'd never heard of. So if he gets one more clean sheet, a new record in Europe's top 5 leagues, 27 clean sheets, which would be pretty staggering. But I don't know. I want Celta to do it.
Go on.
I don't want Celta to get relegated.
What are you thinking? 2-1?
I don't know if they're going to do it. I think they might get a score draw, and that might be enough.
Okay.
But more importantly, I want them to escape. I don't think they will win. I think score draw. I'm going to go 2-2.
2-2. There we have it. Yeah, it's a slight shame about Barcelona's defence in the last few weeks because they did look on course to break the record for fewest goals conceded as well, and I don't think they can anymore.
They, again, don't deserve it, though. I mean, like, it's been Ter Stegen magic. The defence itself is, like, fine.
But fair play. Behind a defence with Balde's new, Christensen's new, Koundé's new. I mean, he has held it all together.
Bro, it's La Liga.
Yeah, okay,
It's not
fair
a serious division.
Maybe it goes back to my striking point. I'm going to go, why not? Iago Aspas popping up with a double. I'm going to go 2-1.
No, I think Barca win. 2-0. 2-0 Barca.
Sending Celta Vigo down?
Yeah, who cares?
Not necessarily.
Miserable. Okay, let's do our final game. Auxerre versus Lens, Sunday 8 p.m. 16th versus 2nd. There's loads of points between them. Again, it's a similar situation, Joe. Auxerre, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Pat, how do you do that? Auxerre could be sent down.
Yeah, definitely. And they have arguably deserved it this season. Of course, if you guys don't know, this year in Liga, 4 teams go down because they're reducing from 20 to 18. So it's not a great time to be Auxerre right now, especially given Lens have already qualified for the Champions League. You know, it's a pretty incredible story there, given some of the sales they faced in the summer, and their rise recently has been remarkable. You know, 7th, 2nd. The work that's been done behind the scenes, they're absolutely incredible. So congratulations to them getting back into the Champions League. I think for the first time in over 20 years. I think the last campaign was 2002. Of course, the last Ligue 1 champions 98. So that's an incredible story. But at the other end of the table, Auxerre struggling here. This is a massive moment for them. I think they've got to play second in the table. Lens, the team that they're battling against, Nantes, are playing bottom of the table. So it kind of works out that they have to win this game, because a draw, also because of the goal difference, is not really good enough for them. I can see a problem here for Auxerre. I think Lyon win the game. The party atmosphere continues. Nobody's been able to stop Openda all season. I think 3-1 Lyon.
3-1. Ouch.
Sending Auxerre down in the process, because Nantes are gonna win.
Pat, do you have any hope for the name you so beautifully pronounced?
Not really. I think that they'll have to get desperate as the game goes on. I think they'll have to open up if they don't score early, and I think that Lens will just kind of cut through them. I think Openda may well add to his tally here. It's just it's a horrible game to end the season with. It's really rough. But
you just don't want Lens, do you, at this stage of the season?
Yeah, they've been really good.
You just got to hope they're pissed.
I was going to say, hopefully they're a bit drunk.
Out.
Yeah, because Napoli had a big dip afterwards. I'm kind of with you. I think it might be 2-0 Lens. Pat, did you put a score down?
I will agree with you, 2-0.
2-0.
That'll send them down if not beat Angers. And that's probably going to happen, isn't it, given that Angers have won 4 all season?
There we have it. So, guys, pay attention to the race for Europa League football in Italy and the relegation battles in La Liga and Ligue 1 this weekend. It's a shame there's not more riding on this weekend, actually. Final weekend, but it's kind of been a weird season like that. There wasn't much riding on the Premier League at the end of it as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching Continental Club this week. Send your congratulations to Pat and Joe for their excellent return onto the show for the first time in
Congratulate
about 5
us.
years. It was excellent. I really enjoyed the cameos. Joe, anything you'd like to push to?
Look out for We Need to Talk. Of course, that's coming tomorrow. And if you've got an idea for We Need to Talk, let me know, because I haven't got one. Actually,
Nice.
I have. We'll be reacting to predictions. I'm going to look back
Ooh.
on those Sunday Vibes predictions we did at the start of the season and my full 1-20 and give a little reaction, because I already know it stinks.
Yeah, mine were terrible as well. Pat, what was why you're wrong this week?
We've got a comparison between City's potential treble winners and Man United's actual treble winners. And obviously we've got Team Talk coming up as well. I think we're going to see a bit more Team Talk going forward. So it's actually quite an exciting time. Hopefully that'll tide people over during the summer football drought.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of transfers, guys. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.